I am Courtney Jacobs, first of all. I started competing back in 2013 in the bikini division, actually. I did my first show in Pennsylvania. I started prepping for that first show when I was deployed to Afghanistan from 2011 to 2012. Um, and I won my first show in the bikini division. So I kind of got hooked into the bodybuilding world, having done that. And then I kind of just took the journey. I grew into the figure division and this year earned my pro card. Yeah, it's been a journey.
So, what initially led you into the sport of bodybuilding?
I was actually a gymnast for 15 years growing up. I had to quit gymnastics because the discs in my back started slipping when I reached roughly like high school time frame. I then transitioned to play volleyball. I did that at a junior Olympic level for 8 years, and then I went into the military when I was 17. Um, and it was actually my training partner at the time when we were in Afghanistan. We trained together every day, and it was kind of just like our own little escape while we were over there. And he was like, well, why don't you compete? Because he had been competing for a few years. And I was like, well, I never really thought about it. He was like, you live the lifestyle already. You might as well just, give it a shot and see how you do. And so I did. And here we are. Ironically enough, though, that same training partner, I got to see him turn pro in 2015 at nationals. So that was really special too. We both got our pro cards after coming home.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Did he have a lot of experience, I guess, in the sport already? Were you both going off of kind of like the just kind of the information that you could find? Like, where did you all really get the information to be like, this is how we're going to train, and this is how we're going to diet, and this is how we're going to, really turn, because being in the military, I feel like too, is it's almost like you're living two kind of extreme lifestyles in the same
Yeah.
time.
It is very extreme. And so he had competed, I think, a few times prior to deploying. And he was actually a huge fan of Ronnie Coleman. So he would build our training programs based off of the styles that Ronnie Coleman would train. So our training programs are very intense a lot of the time. So we kind of just picked up little things from the bigger names in the industry at the time. He picked up a lot of things from Jay Cutler, just like the bigger names at the time. And we just drew from who we could at where we were and did our best. We were in the gym for like 3 hours a day just trying to figure it out. Um,
Yeah.
but it was cool.
Very exciting times, when you first get into like any new endeavor, because you're trying to, like you said, figure it out, and really doing almost anything at the beginning is you're going to
Yeah.
find a little success in it. So it kind of like adds to the fire and adds to that motivation. But at what point did you ever like have a point to where it was like, this is becoming maybe more than I thought, or maybe I need to reevaluate whether this is for me, or like, did you ever have that feeling at all?
I did. So I became a police officer in 2018 or 19. And juggling that with the bodybuilding lifestyle became very hard. I actually competed in 2020 in the figure division and did the worst that I've ever done just because I was trying to juggle so much and so much stress. And I was doing like transition after transition. It just wasn't working. And in 2020, I just said, you know what, I'm done competing. It's not going to work for me. I'm going to take a break. And if the cards fall for me to be competing and doing well, then I will, but I'm going to still train and I'm going to still do everything. I have to put competing on the back burner because it's not realistic right now. Um, but I think I took the time afterwards. I decided that being a police officer really wasn't for me. It didn't really align with what I wanted to do with my actual life as a whole. And so I stopped being a police officer. I kind of dove back into the world of fitness again and fell back in love with bodybuilding, and started my prep last year. And here we are.
When you made the transition from bikini to figure, right? Um, was there any getting used to like different training, whether that's, training different muscles or whatever, more like or eating more maybe, or just like did it take like a period for you to be like, oh, this is kind of new and different?
Yeah, actually, I had that happen to me this year. After I got my pro card. I got my pro card and then I did the New York Pro. And so I had points for the Olympia and I wanted to continue going. And my coach was like, listen, you just turned pro. You did very well in New York. This is an awesome start for your, your rookie year, but we definitely need to grow some more for you to be competitive, at that Olympia level. And so that was very hard for me because in my brain, I have like these conditions, you have to weigh the X amount of weight, you have to look like this and da da da. So growing and gaining that weight was very hard. Um, I was 117 on stage at the New York Pro and I got up to like 140 something this off season. So seeing that number go up um, and know that it's not ever going to be back down to like that 114 again is it's a mental thing, especially when the world grooms you to think, you have to do this, you have to look like this, you have to be this number, when in reality, none of that actually matters. But learning that is hard. So this year, I definitely learned that.
Yeah, and it's so crazy to think like, you can have like a pro bodybuilder, like it's the top of the top physiques like in the world. And even those people, and I'd say even, but especially maybe those people are the people who question their body the most, which is crazy to think.
Yeah. It's I think you question it, but at the same time, the harder you work in the gym, the less you do question that, which is something that was big for me to learn in this growth season. Being that this was my first true off season to put on, a bigger number weight wise. Um, I think leaning into the fact that, oh, I'm actually hack squatting 5, 6 plates now, and you stop doubting that yourself from like an image perspective and you start leaning into, oh, I'm actually really strong, this is awesome. And seeing how you can challenge yourself mentally there. It's all about like your mental perspective and how you look at things. And if you can see that you're struggling, in a trying to fit into an image, if you can just shift your perspective and say, okay, well, I lift heavier now and I'm stronger all around. I am healthier because I'm eating, more food. I'm fueling my muscles so they're going to grow. So it's just shifting your perspective a little bit, I think, when you lose sight of where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. And I think even like having the mindset of like you're supposed to be somewhere too is a challenge sometimes. It's very easy to be like, I want to be here right now. I think that's
That is
something
very hard.
that I think bodybuilders struggle. I feel like anyone trying to like, not just a bodybuilder, but anyone trying to do anything to their body, I feel like struggles with, because the body is so slow to adapt. It's so slow once you get, past that first year of training or whatever, you slow down so much that you just have to be patient. You have to be willing to almost, look at time in like six month periods.
Yeah, and you have to really love what you're doing in the moment. Otherwise, that stuff that's hard feels way harder. So I think it's a lot of times where like beginners do also get a little bit tripped up. They see this, oh, so and so got their pro card in a year or whatever, but they neglect the fact that those people have 15 years of training prior to, competing that one year and lucking out and getting their pro card. It's not luck. It's at that point, they put in the work for a long period of time. And bodybuilding is definitely, like a marathon of a sport. It's not something we get there quickly with.
100%. And whenever you went from bikini to figure, did you notice any difference in, not like the quality, not in the quality or not in like the work ethic, but it just in like almost like a different mindset on things, or on bodybuilding in general? Like, was there any difference in just the people in the classes at all?
I would say my training definitely had to be more intense when I shifted over to the figure division. Um, I've always enjoyed training really hard and lifting very heavy. So the figure division was more of a fit for me naturally anyway. I found myself when I was trying to fit into the bikini division, having to, almost shrink myself to be smaller, just because my body didn't want to be like that. So when I switched over to figure, my training did become like a much more enjoyable. But It still took me, I competed in bikini in 2013 and I didn't compete in the figure division until 2018. So I took a big gap in competing there.
And whenever you finally kind of going back in time a little bit, whenever you did turn pro, did you did you really ever like set was that what you initially set out to do?
I really first started getting into bodybuilding. The I guess the big draw for me is it gives me the space to, I guess, show something big for me in the beginning was showing women that you can be both strong and soft, or, you know, women are expected to be soft in a sense. And you can have both things. You can work very hard and you can build a physique that's something you're very proud of, and simultaneously still be soft, and still keep your like femininity. And I really wanted to prove that. This last prep for me, when I started this for last year in 2021, where I turned pro, I that prep I didn't really, I set out to get my pro card, but in like the April May timeframe, it kind of shifted for me a little bit. And I was really just happy with the fact that I got my body to like somewhere I had never been before. And I envisioned that for myself and it was finally there. So like I kind of lost sight of the pro card for a minute just because I was so happy with where I was in that journey. But my mission always, like when I decide to do something, I want to be at the top of whatever I'm doing. So when I started competing, Natalia Mello at the time was Miss Olympia, and I wanted to go be on the Olympia stage with her. And then since then, you know, I've grown, but being on the Olympia stage is definitely something that's driven me all of these years of competing. At the end of the day,
When you turned pro, what what was going through your head like seeing the athletes, you know, you're obviously going up against a good portion of people who could very well be pro, you know, could win their pro card or will eventually win their pro card. So they're, you know, really quality athletes. Like what is going through your head? Is there a level of like doubt or are you more of a confident person like walking around in that environment? How do you handle that? And how did you like emotionally handle that?
um, you know, Junior USA's was probably the easiest show day that I've ever had. Um, I connected very well with everyone I talked to backstage. I just made it a point to make that day about the experience. I really wanted to be there and immerse myself in that whole experience because I wanted to remember everything. Um, I remember feeling confident. I did see a lot of very beautiful physiques backstage, and it does make you question yourself just a little bit when you see someone that doesn't really look like you, and you know they have an incredible physique. So it's hard to not compare yourself. But I did see it as important for that whole last prep to really practice not comparing myself because I didn't want to ruin the show day for myself either, you know, at the very end. Um, so I really focused that day to try to just make it about the experience and less of comparing myself to other people, because that confidence also just shows on stage. So I wanted to make sure that I felt confident in myself before I went on stage and presented the package that I had brought.
And how do you maintain that confidence? Like, because it, like you said, it's so important for the presentation. How do you maintain that without going into overconfidence and like blowing up your ego and doing all that kind of thing?
Um, well, I am very rooted in my faith. I know that I wouldn't have anything that I have or be anything that I am if I wasn't tied to that. Um, I pray a lot. um, I have always admired people that are humble. Humility is huge to me, and I never want to be the type of person that is looked at as not humble. Um, so I think just always making sure that's in the forefront of my brain and knowing that there's a time to celebrate and there's a time to, you know, be humble in what you've done. I just think, I guess, I guess it could be easy to get arrogant if you weren't grounded in something, but I think that I'm grounded to the point where being arrogant isn't something that I would be.
Gotcha.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.
Yeah. And I feel like it takes almost practice to do that for a lot of people, especially nowadays where there is more attention on bodybuilding. There's more just attention that you can seek online and like
Yeah.
get, 1,000 likes on a post and have so many people telling you in the comments that, you look great, you're doing awesome, you're the best, like all these kinds of things. And then, you go and step on a stage and you're not necessarily you, but, an individual is feeling
Right.
so confident, so high on themselves. And even if they still did go and put in the work and they didn't, they didn't cheat on the plan or whatever, they stuck to it, and you don't come out on top. I can only imagine how that would really crush someone mentally.
That is a crushing thing. And in 2018, I actually competed at North Americans and I got second place. And I was not aware that second place didn't get their pro cards until we were lined up backstage. And I had asked, first and second place get their pro cards, right? Because I knew that I had got called out in the lineup. And they said, no, it's just first place. And I got second place and I was very crushed because I knew that I had worked so hard and that prep was really hard for me. But at that time, my motivating factor, my driving factor wasn't, I guess, in check. I wanted to get that pro card because I wanted to prove to everyone that even though I was in a hard place and I was struggling, I could still go win my pro card. And I think it takes having a few gut checks and not being knocked down a few times to really be able to take that humility and harness it. And you almost don't want to be arrogant about anything. You want to, it's almost just validating at that point when you win, because you know that everything's in alignment and you know that it's lined up for you. And I just think it's really important to find that grounding place within yourself. And so that stuff doesn't get out of control, or so when you don't do well in a show, it doesn't crush you on a soul level, making sure that your driving force is in a healthy place. I think can prevent you from, feeling crushed at the end of a show if you don't place as well as you want to.
And you mentioned, trying to prove it to everybody else and like showing everybody else. Do you feel like that it takes that shift to be like, I'm doing this for me, that's whenever you see some of like the biggest changes?
I think it absolutely takes that shift. They say bodybuilding is a selfish sport and it's a lonely sport and everything. And I agree with that to an extent, but I think that when people say that, they're more or less referencing, you have to be able to find that place of isolation in your brain to do well. And to be able to remove all of these outsider opinions and everything, whether they're good or bad. You have to find a place in your brain where you are just solid. And I think that that's key.
And kind of going back to what I said before about social media, but having a decent following on social media, how do you keep that balance of like of I guess staying within reality of what you like, how you can control what's going on kind of within your own mind, while you also have so many people on social media that may be reinforcing, like you said, it could be good or it could be bad. Like, how do you kind of stay within reality?
So social media is a tool. I think it's a great tool for people to have, and it has a way of consuming you. And in the past, it has consumed me to the point where like things that people would say would, destroy my mental health for a week at a time, when they say, oh, you look like a man, or, anything like that. And I just think that, like with everything else in life, there needs to be compartments for things. And there needs to be boundaries. And if you set up boundaries within yourself regarding social media, that stuff won't get out of hand as long as you keep your boundaries in check. And for me, that looks like I'll post things that I'm proud of. And I care and I'm very grateful when people say nice things, but it doesn't really affect me when people say negative things, because at the end of the day, I'm still proud of the work that I'm doing. And I think this year more than ever, being so tied into my faith, I feel more confident saying that out loud, just because I know that I'm not alone and I do have like God to lean on if things are hard for me.
And then when you finally, got your pro card and you're, standing on stage, tell us a little bit about like what that experience is like, and not just like in the moment, but also a little bit like what it was like after, because you hear in bodybuilding and with any kind of big goal, whenever you achieve something, you have that high and then it kind of sinks away a little bit, and it kind of feels you like it leaves you with this sense of almost like an emptiness of like, oh my gosh, I achieved this huge thing. And now what do I do? Like, tell us a little bit about what it was like to do it and then what it was like afterwards as well.
So achieving my pro card was awesome. I was so happy on stage. It was a mixture of emotions. You're trying not to cry on stage because you're so happy. I was very grateful in that moment. That meant a lot to me because it just felt so monumental that I had finally achieved something I set out to do a while ago in 2013. So it felt really good. And then my coach and I made the decision to go to the New York Pro immediately following getting my pro card. So we had like 6 days, we basically just stayed in peak week. And did New York, and I got fourth place there out of, it was like 16 or 17 girls. And so that was also a big high for me because, that's a big show. And so that they were two really big back-to-back highs. And there was a big blue period after that where I knew that I was going to have to grow. So in my mind, I'm going to have to put on weight. And so that was a hard thought process. I'm going to go from being the best I've ever looked to now in my brain, oh no, I'm going to put on all this weight. I'm gonna have to get it back off. I think the blue period definitely comes with any time you have a high and a low. And I kind of knew that it would come after getting my pro card at some point. It was kind of like a rough week and a half. To be honest, I didn't know what to do. So I did message my coach and ask if we could do another show again. Cause I wanted to keep competing. I didn't want to look bad, or in my brain look bad. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of just, you ride the wave and you know that it's going to come, and you let yourself be in that moment and just keep with your consistency, keep going to the gym, keep on your meal plan, like the end goal is ultimately be at the Olympia. So even though I was feeling like, terrible about just being, not having a high anymore, I still knew that this is a necessary step and you have to stay consistent if you have big goals still at the end of the day.
And when you have those, those big goals that could be years down the line, how do you really, because this is something that I feel like I can relate to just from a general level, not necessarily bodybuilding, but like whenever you have this goal that you want to achieve, you can get really excited and things when you're going to the gym and you feel like you're making that headway, you're making that progress because you're physically doing something. Or maybe even like whenever you're preparing meals or whenever you're eating, you can maybe feel like that. Or, maybe during like an active recovery, but like whenever you're just quote unquote doing nothing in relation to like achieving and getting closer to that goal, how do you, or do you struggle at all with like those down periods of the day? And if so, like how do you kind of get through those in a positive way?
A lot of it is self-talk, to be totally honest, because I think all of us, I know myself, do have those, lower periods in the day if your end goal is not anywhere in the near immediate future. I think having multiple goals along the way will help. So like setting smaller goals for yourself. I'd like to be able to get, 5 plates on the hack squat. Something that was big for me was setting bigger goals for bigger things. So I knew that I had to add a little more quad sweep, and I knew that I had to add a little more density and detail to my back. So I made it a point to, make sure I set big goals for myself on those days specifically. And it helps you kind of keep that end goal in sight, but also at the same time, it helps you channel that energy into something almost more immediate. If you can set little goals along the way to your big goal, then you're still checking off goals left and right, and you're kind of stopping the thought process of being stagnant.
Right.
Which is where that ultimately that comes from. You think you're in a stagnant place, so the negativity of that starts to overwhelm you, and then people find themselves blue and shut down. And if you had something other than that long-term goal, a smaller one, or even just something silly, like a new outfit, a new wardrobe, or something like that, there's little types of goals you can set for yourself along the way that make the process still just as exciting.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, like what just like a new shirt can do, or a new
A
pair
new
of
gym
shoes.
outfit can change your whole entire attitude.
Exactly. Yeah. Or just like, finding that new song, or like watching a movie. There's so many different things you can do
Yeah.
to like give yourself that boost just to get you through that. And I think motivation, it got such a bad rap last year and like in the previous years of being like, motivation doesn't matter. It's all about discipline. And I think discipline is definitely the most important thing. But like if you're not ever motivated to do something, then I feel like maybe you should question whether you really love it. And because if you're not motivated, you're not like excited about it. So I'm not saying that you should only do it if you're in like motivated state, but if you're finding yourself never motivated, maybe like question, am I doing this for the right reasons?
Yeah, and I think that what you just said is the essential part of that too. If you're doing it for the right reasons, um, that motivation does come and go. But really, even when you don't have motivation and that consistency piece is there, that's good. But when you do have motivation, the intensity piece is there. When you're motivated, your training sessions are more intense. How you approach your day is more intense, and that stuff, all of those motivating factors come from that passion part that's inside you. And if that passion part isn't being ignited, then your motivation obviously isn't going to be there. You're not going to feel happy to go do something that you're not passionate about when it's, you know, 5 plates on a hack squat, you know.
Yeah.
But I do think that motivation will come and go. And that's why consistency and all of that stuff is there. But I don't think motivation necessarily is a bad thing.
With the elevation, if you will, of athlete, whenever you're going against pros, how do you find yourself, I guess, really in this upcoming year, this upcoming season? How do you find yourself starting to elevate what you do?
I guess elevating for myself means making myself massively uncomfortable. In the past, where things have been flexible for me before, like with my diet, like, oh, I'll add some sauces here and there, or, stuff like that. I can't do that now. When you reach that level and you are a professional, something flips in your head where I think to get to the professional level, you obviously have to carry yourself and be a professional in your head before you arrive there. But once you achieve that, you almost have to like put yourself on a higher level in your own brain. So you have to start holding yourself to a higher standard. So you almost want to start giving more to the smaller things. So like sauces in the past are things that I would have used. I don't use sauces during prep anymore, just because I know that those are extra calories that, although they're negligible, it's not something that's in my plan. So it's not something that I'm going to, add intentionally. Training, where my training intensity has gone up this year big time. That's something that was a big shift for me. I guess maybe last year I did lose a little bit of that motivation for a little while. And I think getting my pro card and everything did just kind of re-spark that motivation. It gave me another little bit of fire in the pit of me. Recovery and sleep is essential for me personally. So when I started this prep, I knew that my sleep schedule was going to have to be in check. I have always in the past struggled with sleep. I have issues with insomnia and all, everything that's tied to it. So I did know that during my off season, I was going to have to make sure that during prep, my sleep schedule is good to go. So this whole prep, I did focus on making sure I'm in bed by X time. I wake up at X time, and at least that chunk of my routine didn't change drastically. Additionally, the body work is something that I am doing weekly now. I started that at the end of the last prep, probably the last 4 weeks, I was getting body work weekly. And so this prep, I moved to Tampa recently, and I found a man named Hunter. He's an awesome massage therapist, but he does like active recovery things. He modifies like exercises to make sure that you get like deeper stretches in your shoulders or anything. He's just a really great, he was a really great find down here. So I'm on his books weekly now to be having body work weekly. And then as the show gets closer, I do like obviously start tanning. Stuff like that does go up. And then this year, staying on top of my supplements is big, where I'm historically massively guilty of not taking my vitamins or my greens. I am focusing really hard on that this season.
How did you kind of see those things translate?
So the actual benefits for me that I saw were...
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20. Online at mybapparel.com.
Well, for one, I actually listened. So when my coach was like, you need to do this, and this. Okay, fine. I'm going to do this, and this, and exactly how you say it. So I did. And I stayed consistent, and I just knew that I had to do that stuff. In my brain, it was no different than a prescription from a doctor. Like, you have to do this. You have to get 8 hours of sleep. This is what's going to make you in an optimal place. But I started also noticing that I'm in general, I struggle a little bit with anxiety. That stuff started to diminish. Not completely go away, but it did start to like fade a little bit. So when I started implementing these things that made my physical body look better at the end of the day, it also improved me on the inside, where like I was sleeping better. And once I was able to get myself into a nighttime routine and a routine, the rest of my day just felt better. So I also am motivating myself this time for this prep, because I don't want to stop feeling good at any point during a prep.
Right.
So I think doing all of this stuff and making sure that at the end of the day, I still feel good is very important. And I have neglected that stuff in the past for sure.
And it's crazy how many people tell me about like once they get into a healthy routine, it's not crazy that it works or it happens, but it's crazy how many people talk about it. And then how many people outside of this community, fitness and bodybuilding, whatever, don't implement that. But you talked about like how your anxiety went down, and multiple people said that, like just being like knowing this is what I'm going to do, like mentally you're a little bit more, I feel like, you know what's going to be coming. So it's like, I'm doing this. And physically as well, like people talk all the time about, well, whenever I started to eat clean more frequently and on a routine basis, my gut health improved, my any kind of like irritability with my gut, all these kind of different things, mental clarity, all kinds of stuff. It's just amazing. Like when we put ourselves, and you see it with like bad routines too, like how that, almost like introducing healthy stuff initially will mess the system up. And the same is true with being on a healthy routine. I see it sometimes when I eat fried food. It's like, oh my gosh, my stomach is dead. I don't want to move for like the next day. But once like getting onto that routine and making sure it's a healthy one, like it's so powerful, just mentally, physically, emotionally. I think there's so many benefits to just a routine.
There's massive power in having a routine. I mean, even if you, so I listen to a lot of these podcasts with these really successful people, you know, they talk about how they got to these places, and the number one thing for them is having a routine. And when all of these successful people, the number one piece of advice they're all giving you consistently is have a routine, then maybe there's some validity to that, you know? And I think people are hesitant to start a routine because no one really wants to start over ever at square one. And when you're starting a new routine, it does look and feel as though you're starting over at square one. And most people, you know, are fearful of what other people are going to think of them or something like that. And so it does stunt you from wanting to stop something new. Um, but I think if people could just get over that part, the fear of like what other people are going to think, and just start, then the routine will follow because it feels good. And people want to do stuff that feels good anyway.
100%. And I feel like one big factor for me is I'm like a very obsessive person about, I guess, like I'm not a perfectionist to the point that a lot of people are when it comes to like if I'm not in a perfect place and I won't do something, but I feel like I am in a way of like I'm a perfectionist when it comes to like a checklist. So if I don't hit every single thing I'm supposed to do in my routine, it'll just make me feel so, it just makes me feel like I wasted that day, or like I didn't do well, even though I could have done like 4 out of 5 things. If I didn't, you know, get the, because I'm huge on sleep. Like that's one thing during 2022, I was almost too obsessed over. But like if I would get like 90% of my sleep needs or less, like I would feel like I just completely ruined my whole next day and I wasn't recovered well enough and I needed to like work out less and I needed to, so it was just like this cascade effect of like too much obsession and too much perfection over that routine. But I feel like if you can get over the fact that like you're not going to be perfect, then you can achieve so much by just like pushing yourself, but really just doing what you can do.
Yeah, and I think the idea of perfect, that's different for everyone, obviously. Everyone's got a different idea of what perfect is, which is precisely why you should not be afraid to, you know, keep doing what you're doing, because even if it's not perfect in your eyes, it could be to someone else, and you just doing something will motivate and inspire someone else to do something, you know? And if we can all operate like that in like a community mindset where, you know, we all push each other, then that would be a cool thing. And I think more people would be like less hesitant to get into fitness, or even just fitness is like the number one way to get your life on track, because it's something you have control over, complete control over. And that feeling of control is what people are missing in their lives. Like they're chained to a desk at a job, they're chained to this, they're chained to that, and their kids and whatever. And even if that stuff isn't a burden and it's necessary, you still need an area where you can take control and feel like you're in charge of your life, even if it's just for an hour of your day. Um, it's so it's so powerful, you know.
Yeah. I think what people think at the beginning is that it's another chain, though. It's like, oh, I'm chained to this new thing. I have to go to the gym. I have to eat these things. I have to do this. I have to do that. Like more have tos in people's lives are what they're not looking for, but they don't really see the long term of what you get to do because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to, I mean, yeah. When people, it touches a little bit on like coming from a mindset place. So if you're coming from a place of like scarcity, you know, then you're not going to attract a lot of, you know, really great things into your life. Whereas if you're coming from a place of abundance and you're not restricting yourself and saying, I have to do this, and you change that to, I get to do this, you know, even that, those little words or the little things that you tell yourself, those are ways to, you know, just even shift that perspective a little bit in your own brain, because it all starts there.
Yeah. I think having a mindset of abundance too is just so much like less stressful in general. And I find myself sometimes slipping into the scarcity mindset of like, oh, I don't want people to find out like my ideas, or I don't want them to, you know, before I do them, I don't want to tell anybody.
It makes you doubt yourself before you even start something.
That's the beauty, I feel like, of kind of like the modern age, is that we can like collaborate on so many different things and everybody really benefits. And you mentioned social media and like how we can inspire each other. And there's certain accounts that I'll go to literally like not right when I wake up, but like in the morning, I'll like go to those accounts and of people who are like doing the things that I want to do. And it just like pushes me, it motivates me like, oh my gosh, they're in the gym at 5 a.m. doing this already. I'm just now getting out of bed. Like I need to get my game up.
Oh, gotta hurry there.
But it's so cool just like how something that somebody shared within their life can, make you want to do better in yours.
Yeah, and I think just seeing other people as humans also helps, because I think people get this idea of like, they glamorize certain people like celebrities and pro like football players and pro basketball. They glamorize these people and you forget that they're real people too. And you almost find yourself in like an inferior place when you like look at them. But I think that social media is awesome because it gives you an insight into all of these people's lives. And it's really no different than anyone else's. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
uh, and I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to see how other people live their lives and maybe just take some things that could help you live yours a little bit better from that. I do think social media is a great tool for that, and inspiring and connecting with other like-minded people. Humans need other humans. We all need each other. And social media is funny, like you said, because it was a tool to like connect people and get them closer. And for a little while there, all it was doing was like bringing people apart and creating division. And I think people are starting to wake up to the idea that if you have this platform and you have this outlet, then the world is like such a crazy, chaotic place right now. If you can use it for some level of positivity, then I think we should all do that, because that's what the world needs. If you turn on the news, it's just terrible. You turn on anything you look at, it's just bad thing after bad thing. And we have the power of our voice, and we have the power of this like social media, this tool where we can talk to other people and still spread a message of hope and spread a message of positivity and like show the world that that's still out there, even though the news isn't projecting that. Keeping it like a community where people feel safe to show themselves or to be proud of themselves for something. A lot of times people, and I've struggled with it in the past, like won't post something because you're afraid that it's going to be stupid or you're only going to get 32 likes on it. And, I think all of us struggle when we know we're going to post something and it's only going to get a couple likes because, well, if no one's seeing my stuff, why bother posting? You're posting at the end of the day for that one person that reads your message or reads your post or sees whatever, and it keeps them going for that day. And I think if we can just think of social media like that as a tool to motivate and inspire other people and less to highlight our own selves, I think it would be a better and a more positive place.
For this upcoming season, what are some of your goals? What are some of the things that you have set out for this, 2023?
All right. So 2023, I will be doing my first show in Charlotte. We're prepping for the Charlotte Cup right now. That's April 22nd and 23rd. Really excited. And then the goal is I'm going to bring my best package to that show. My goal is to go and win the show and get my Olympia qualification. I haven't set up a backup plan. I'm going to give 1000% of everything that I am to the Charlotte prep.
A lot of times the best way to do it is just kind of like diving all into it and
yeah, you never know what's on the other side of that door, and you're never going to know unless you go all in. And if you're going to do something, you might as well do something 1000%. A quote that I heard a really, really long time ago that stuck with me and I'll carry forever. And it was, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So, I think that can be applied to bodybuilding, obviously, but everything in life. I had a saying with my coach last prep, all gas. And so that's what we're doing this year. And every day is a new opportunity to be better than you were yesterday. And, you treat every day like you start off every day with it. The intention is going to be, this is going to be the best day. I'm going to have the best training thing. You evaluate your day at the end of the day and see what you need to do the next day and press on. I love prep because it does challenge you to grow on the inside. I think if you let it, it forces you to a place where you do have to eliminate distractions and you do have to eliminate foods and you go to basically like a bare bones setup for life, and it forces you to value the things in your life worth valuing. And I love prep for that reason, because it puts everything back into perspective at the end of the day. When you start worrying about little dumb things like what color lip gloss you should put on or whatever, you have to remember that at the end of the day, that stuff doesn't matter. In the big picture, it's not worth your stress.
It almost feels like that is such a time of like you mentioned, bare bones. Like you really start to evaluate because you have the opportunity to evaluate, and all the emotional doors are open, so you can kind of like see what's good and see what's bad almost.
Yeah, it's a crystal clear look into your life and the areas of your life that are worth growing and that are worth stopping the growth. Prep has always been really transformative, ironically enough, on the inside, for me, just because it's always forced me to go to a darker place. And in that darker place, you can always find the areas of yourself that have been damaged and need to heal. And it's almost like a rebirth every time you do a prep, because you're allowing yourself to go to that place, because you have to go to that place to push through the prep. But when you're in that place, you can see, and things are more clear when you remove all of the distractions. You know, we struggle in the past, or we struggle in our on season, because we have friends influencing us and family influencing us and foods influencing us, and we can just go out randomly, you know, and that stuff gets stripped away during prep, and your crutches are gone. So anything that you use to kind of avoid the stress or avoid whatever, now you are face to face with those things, and you have to fix them, or you know, they're going to continue to be a weak area in your life, and no one wants to have weak areas in their life.
It's, bodybuilding is such kind of like this allegory, I guess, for life. You going from like improving, and then you have that test, and really
Yeah.
almost the test is like the prep in a way, and then you have like the competition, which is like finally getting your grade on that test, and then repeating and recycling and trying to, like you said, get better every time. It's such a cool like metaphor for life.
I think that was very well said. Bodybuilding is a very good metaphor for life.
Bodybuilding is such a good opportunity for people to just put themselves into a stressful environment and see kind of what happens.
Yeah, and that stress, honestly, every time I've been in a stressful environment, and God knows there's been plenty, um, you don't have a choice but to grow. Because when stress is applied, you know, weaknesses come forward, and you're either going to grow through that weakness or you're going to break. And either way, at the end of that, you've grown. So I like applying to stress to my life, just because it does force you to grow. And the more you grow, the more people you can reach, and the more of an impact you can leave on this world, because you can relate to more people. And I think that's what it's all about, being able to relate to another person and, you know, guide them back to the light if they're in a dark place.
Yeah, and that's a big part of what this podcast is all about. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing some stuff about yourself.
Yeah, this was an awesome experience. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And if you want to, before we head out, share any social media or anything like that, you can.
Well, my Instagram is Guns and Buns 13, GUNSNBUNS 13. That's all I really use. I have TikTok, but I don't really. I think I have like 2 videos on there, and they're both like kind of just silly, but well, I have that too.